Most people think they fall asleep and go nowhere, that their body shuts down, their mind drifts, and nothing else happens. But that's not the truth, because something leaves you every single night, and it's not your imagination. You felt it, the floating sensation, the paralysis, the dreams that felt too real, the exhaustion after a full night of rest, the whispers you couldn't place when you woke up. Your soul is not resting. It's remembering, it's moving. It's returning to places the waking mind was trained to forget. Ancient civilizations knew. A forbidden book mapped it. And in the next few minutes, you're going to understand what no one ever taught you, where your soul goes when the body finally lets go. Keep watching, because what's waiting on the other side of sleep might change your waking life forever. You close your eyes, your muscles loosen, your breath slows. To the outside world, you're asleep. But something inside you isn't. Not really, because your soul doesn't rest. Not the way your body does. There's a part of you that stays awake in the silence, that watches even when the eyes are closed, that feels even when the body is still. You felt this before, in the way your heart races in a dream that wasn't a dream, in the sudden knowing that arrives in the morning, as if it was whispered to you while you slept, in the strange sensation that you went somewhere, but can't explain where. We call it sleep, but ancient traditions called it something else entirely. The little death, the soul's departure, the nightly crossing. They knew something modern science has tried to forget, that sleep is not just a biological necessity. It is a spiritual phenomenon. And the most powerful part of it? You've been doing it every single night, without being taught, without being prepared, without remembering. But your soul has never forgotten. It's been moving, traveling, learning, serving. You thought you were dreaming, but you were remembering. You thought your mind was making things up, but your consciousness was moving through real dimensions. Some call them astral planes, others call them spirit worlds, but the name doesn't matter. What matters is this: you leave, you go, you cross over. And even if your brain has no memory of it, your energy field does. That's why you sometimes wake up feeling heavy or inspired or sad for no reason. It's not random, it's residue. Something happened, somewhere else, and a part of you knows it. There's a reason certain dreams haunt you, why you wake up mid-sentence, why you feel like someone was with you, because they were. And there's a reason you're here now, listening to these words, feeling that soft pull in your chest. The part of you that says, I know this already, I've just forgotten how to say it. You're not broken, you're not disconnected, you're just beginning to remember what your soul has always known, that there's a part of you that never truly sleeps. And in the next few minutes, we're going to trace its path, because while your body rests in one place, your consciousness goes elsewhere. And once you see where, you'll never see sleep the same way again. You've felt it before, that moment when your body becomes heavy, but something else in you starts to feel lighter, not sleepy, not tired, just separate, as if you're still inside yourself, but not only yourself. It might happen as you're drifting off to sleep, or in the middle of the night, when you wake up for no reason, your heart pounding, your breath caught halfway between here and somewhere else. You may have chalked it up to stress, to strange dreams, to the body doing strange things at night. But it wasn't just the body, because every night without fail, something in you slips away, and it's not a metaphor. You're not just resting, you're departing. Ancient Egyptian scrolls spoke of the Ba, the part of the soul that leaves the sleeping body and flies through realms unseen. The Tibetans called it the dream body, capable of visiting other planes during sleep, bound to the flesh only by a thin silver cord. In both traditions they knew what we call sleep is far more than biological rest. It's a ritual exit, a sacred split. The body stays behind, but your consciousness does not. And this isn't some distant myth. You felt it. You just didn't know how to name it. That sudden sense of floating. That moment when it feels like you're falling, only to jolt awake just before impact. The weightlessness, the spinning, the buzzing behind your ears, the soft vibration in your chest. It's not random. It's not neurological static. It's your consciousness preparing to move. It's you standing at the threshold between worlds, caught between the gravity of this realm and the freedom of the next. And sometimes you do go further. Sometimes you leave completely. You visit temples, you walk through cities made of light. You meet those you've loved before. You face shadows you haven't yet healed. And when you return, you wake up with no words, just a lingering feeling, a fog, a pull in your chest, a whisper in the bones. That's not confusion, that's residue. You traveled, you just don't remember, but your soul does. The truth is, you've never spent a full night entirely on this plane. Every time your eyes close, something in you opens, and what leaves the body, that isn't a dream, it's departure. And now, we begin to track where it goes, because what happens next will challenge everything you thought sleep was for. And what you're about to remember has been waiting lifetimes to return. It was never meant to survive. A manuscript written long before electricity, long before modern medicine, long before humanity decided that sleep was just a biological reset. It didn't teach how to sleep better. It taught how to leave the body. And more importantly, how to return. This wasn't poetry. It was a map, a guide for the soul. Passed in secret, hidden in monasteries, burned by kings, banned by churches. Some say it came from Egypt, encoded in symbols and rituals found in the Book of the Dead. Others say it came from the high Himalayas, whispered through Tibetan dream yoga, where monks were trained to stay lucid through every layer of consciousness, even death. But the truth? Its origin doesn't matter as much as what it reveals, because deep within this forgotten book was a truth too powerful, too liberating, and too disruptive for any empire to allow. That every night you travel, that sleep is not just stillness, it's movement. It's the soul walking through other dimensions, learning, remembering, healing, or being tested. And this book, this forbidden map, charted the way. It described a silver thread connecting your physical body to your astral form. A thread that stretches, bends, hums with life, but can never be cut while the body still breathes. It listed signs you felt, the spinning sensation before sleep, the whisper in your ears, the vibration in your chest, the floating that begins just as your body falls still. It warned of portals, windows that open only in certain states, during deep sleep, during biphasic waking, or in that flickering moment just before your name returns to you in the morning. But the most powerful secret, that those who learn to read their nightly journey can remember who they are beyond this life. Because this isn't just about where your soul goes, it's about why it goes, what it does, who it meets, and what it brings back. It's not just a dream. It's not just your brain sorting thoughts. It's you returning to the astral library. It's you reuniting with teachers and guardians. It's you remembering paths walked in other worlds, even as the world around you sleeps in silence. And that's why this book was hidden. Because once you realize that sleep is sacred, you stop living like you're only a body. You stop believing you're just a mind. You begin to walk through life as someone who's traveled and returned, with memory still glowing behind the eyes. You don't have to read the forbidden book to find the way, because now the journey has already begun. You were taught that sleep is for rest, that it's nothing more than a maintenance cycle for the body, that dreams are random. That night is just nature's way of helping you reset. But that was never the full truth. And deep down, you've always known that. Because what you experience in sleep, it's not just physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual, sometimes terrifying, sometimes divine, but rarely meaningless. So why, in all your years of being alive, was none of this ever explained? Why were you never told that what happens in sleep might be more important than what happens in waking life? The answer is simple and ancient, because those in power have always known controlling the night means controlling the soul. It started when the sacred became dangerous, when mysticism was labeled heresy, when anything that couldn't be weighed, measured, or monetized was cast into the fire. They burned books, they silenced dreamers, they exiled the mystics who spoke of astral journeys and soul travel. Because they understood what these teachings could do, they feared the awakened sleeper, the human who walked through life, with the memory of the other side still intact. So over time, the mystery of the night was reduced to biology. Sleep was dissected, measured in stages, reduced to REM cycles and brainwaves. You became a machine. Dreams became data. The soul, nowhere to be found. But that wasn't science. That was strategy. Because when you no longer believe that your soul is active while you sleep, you stop listening to what it's trying to tell you. You dismiss the visions, ignore the warnings, forget the places, silence the wisdom. You wake up with the memory of another world pressed against your chest, and you brush it off like dust. But those who came before you didn't. The ancient Egyptians believed the dream state was a literal passage to the afterlife. Tibetan monks trained their entire lives to stay conscious during sleep, treating it as a rehearsal for death and liberation. To them, sleep wasn't a shutdown, it was a doorway. But for you, you were given alarms and pills and blue light screens. You were given distractions, conditioning, noise. Because a soul in silence is a soul that might awaken. And once you realize that sleep is not just rest, but return, you begin to ask the questions they never wanted you to ask. Where do I go? Who do I meet? What am I bringing back? Because sleep isn't the end of your awareness. It's the beginning of remembering what your awareness really is. And now that you know what was hidden from you, the truth is already returning. There is a reason you return every morning, a reason your soul can wander through realms of shadow and light, and still find its way back to your body, to your breath, to this world. You are never drifting untethered. You are never alone in the dark. There is a thread, invisible to the eye, but ancient as existence itself. The mystics called it the silver cord, a luminous filament that binds your consciousness to your physical form, not by force, but by design. The silver cord isn't just spiritual poetry. It's been described across cultures, centuries apart, from the Hebrew scriptures in Ecclesiastes to the astral teachings of theosophy, to the lived experiences of countless souls who've left their bodies and come back changed. Those who have hovered above their own sleeping bodies, those who have traveled through tunnels of light, those who have crossed the veil and returned, speak of this cord. this silvery connection, this soft, shimmering pulse between worlds. You don't need to see it to feel its truth. You've already experienced it. Have you ever jolted awake from a dream with the sensation of being snapped back into your body? That wasn't your imagination. That was the cord pulling you home. It stretches, it extends, but it never breaks until your final breath. Because that's the great design of this reality. Your soul is free to explore, to drift across dimensions, to learn and unlearn in the secret hours of the night. But it's always connected to the vessel it chose. For this incarnation, always tethered, until your time is complete. And when it does break, when the silver cord finally dissolves, that's when we no longer return to this world. That is death. But until then, you are allowed to roam. You are allowed to rise. You are allowed to leave the heaviness of this world behind and remember what it feels like to be light again. The cord is your promise, your lifeline, your bridge, and while you sleep, it holds the boundary. It keeps your body breathing, while your spirit walks among other planes. It's why you can forget your dreams and still wake up with messages. It's why you can feel watched in sleep, but still safe, still whole, still you. Because your journey is guided, because your return is guaranteed for now. And knowing this, that something ancient and divine has been watching over you every night, holding you through your most vulnerable state, isn't that a kind of love? A love written not in words, but in threads of light that connect what cannot be seen, but has never, ever been separate. And maybe now you feel it, the pull, the memory, the cord. It's been there all along. You've already gone. You just don't remember where. You've crossed through dimensions wrapped in silence. You've walked in cities that don't exist on any map. You've spoken to souls who don't walk this world anymore. You've drifted between timelines, received messages, been part of something greater. And then you woke up. Your name returned. Your feet touched the floor. And all of it vanished like mist. But just because you don't remember doesn't mean it didn't happen. Memory is a fragile thing, especially when it crosses the veil. What your mind forgets, your energy remembers, your body remembers, your heart remembers. That strange heaviness when you open your eyes, that tension in your chest after a dream you can't name, that unshakable knowing that you were somewhere else, even if you couldn't point to where. This is not imagination. This is the residue of experience, because the soul never sleeps. And every time your body releases control, it goes back to the in-between, back to the learning temples, back to the ones who guide you. But most of us, we forget the moment we re-enter the waking world, because we've never been trained to remember. We weren't told how to hold the thread, how to decode the images, how to recognize the feeling of having just returned from somewhere sacred. The ancients had rituals for this. They wrote down dreams before the sun could burn them away. They listened to the pulse of emotion that lingered in the body. They honored sleep as a journey, not an interruption. But we were taught to rush past it, to wake and scroll, to shower and forget, to silence what we cannot explain. And that's why we lose it, night after night, crossing borders we don't remember crossing, returning from worlds we've never learned to name. But the truth is, your remembering can begin now, because the signs are already there, in the patterns, in the dreams that repeat, in the knowledge you wake up with, but don't know how you received, in the moments when the day feels like a déjà vu of something you never consciously lived. You've already traveled, your soul has already gone, And in the chapters that follow, you're going to learn how to recognize the trail it leaves behind. The signs, the clues, the symbols that whisper, you were here, you left, you returned. This journey is not starting now. It started long ago, but this is the moment. You finally begin to remember it. There's a kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. You felt it, you get your hours, maybe even 8. But you wake up feeling heavy, like you ran a marathon in a place you can't name, like you carried something through the night and you're still holding it when the sun rises. It doesn't make sense. You followed the rules. No screens before bed, no caffeine. You did everything right. And still, you wake up exhausted. Not just in the body, but in the soul. That's not normal fatigue. That's the residue of travel. Because while your body was resting, your consciousness was not. You may have been in service, helping, healing, guiding someone through their darkness, standing witness in a place where language doesn't work, but love still does. Or maybe you were learning, inside a dream that didn't feel like a dream, inside a moment that felt too structured, too vivid, too real, to be random. This is one of the most overlooked signs of soul travel. The nights where you rest, but don't recover. The dreams you don't remember, but that leave an emotional fingerprint anyway. The mornings when you feel like something happened, but can't explain what. It's not because you're broken. It's not a vitamin deficiency. It's because you went far. Your soul stepped into a realm. Your waking mind hasn't been trained to navigate. And when it returns, it brings with it the weight of what it witnessed. Sometimes that weight is wisdom. Sometimes it's sadness, or joy, or silence that feels louder than thought. But one thing is always true. You wake up changed. There are entire spiritual traditions that recognize this. Tibetan monks speak of dream yoga, training the consciousness to stay lucid during sleep, so it can return without confusion. Indigenous shamans honor the night as a time of journeying, of walking between worlds, of retrieving pieces of the self. Even mystics who never met across cultures describe the same thing. The night is not for forgetting, it's for remembering, it's for becoming whole. And the exhaustion you feel, it's not weakness, it's a signal, a soft message from the soul that says, I've been somewhere, I've seen something, and now I need time to land. So if you've been waking up tired, really tired, and nothing seems to explain it, stop blaming your body. Start listening to your spirit, because some of the hardest work doesn't happen while you're awake. It happens while the world is quiet, while the soul is moving, while the body forgets. But something eternal begins to remember. And that fatigue, that's your proof that something real is happening in the dark. Some dreams fade the moment you open your eyes. They slip away like smoke, leaving only fragments, colors, echoes, feelings you can't name. But some stay with you. You wake up and you feel it. In your body, in your chest, like you were just somewhere else, doing something real. The air smells different. Your breath feels heavier. The people in the dream had weight. Not just faces, but energy. Not just stories, but memory. It wasn't fantasy. It wasn't a mental collage of your day. It was a place, a moment, a return. There are dreams that are not dreams. There are dreams that are soul memory, a replay of a journey you took while your body was sleeping. These dreams have detail, architecture, emotional texture. Sometimes even pain or joy that doesn't match your current life, because it didn't come from here. You might walk through an ancient city you've never seen in waking life, but feel as if you've known for centuries. You might speak a language your mind doesn't recognize, but your soul instantly understands. You might meet someone whose face is unfamiliar, but whose presence cracks something wide open in you. That's not imagination, that's the soul, surfacing what it remembers. Science tells us dreams are just your brain, sorting information, filing memories, processing emotions. But what if that's only half the truth? What if some dreams are visitations? What if some dreams are lessons? What if your higher self is leaving you clues, breadcrumbs to follow? Back to a part of you that's been here many times before. Carl Jung believed that dreams carried messages from the unconscious that could lead us toward transformation. But the mystics took it further. To them, vivid dreams, especially those that repeat, are echoes from beyond the veil, not just subconscious symbols, but soul communications. And if you ever had one, you know what I mean. You don't forget them. You can't. They come with a weight, a vibration, a silence that hums louder than words. You wake up, and the dream follows you into the shower, into breakfast, into your thoughts hours later, still pulling at you like a thread. That's not coincidence, that's remembrance. Your soul is speaking, not in logic, but in feeling, not in language, but in presence. So the next time you wake from a dream, that feels like it actually happened. Don't dismiss it. Don't shrink it down to a glitch in the brain. Because some dreams are not dreams, they're reminders. And if you follow them closely enough, they'll lead you back to the part of you that never forgot. There's a moment, just before sleep or just after a dream, when you feel something in the room with you. You're not scared, you're not alone, but you know you're being watched, not by someone physical, but by something gentle, something aware, something ancient. It's subtle, like a warmth brushing your shoulder, like eyes you can't see, but somehow feel. And in that moment, you don't need proof. You just know you're being protected. Most people dismiss it. They roll over. They brush it off as their imagination. But you felt the difference. That soft pull of presence, that unspoken assurance, that even in your most vulnerable state, you are not alone. Across countless traditions, there are whispers of these watchers. The Egyptians spoke of netters, divine forces that protect the soul's passage through the underworld. The Tibetans spoke of dream guardians, stationed at the edge of the dreamscape to guide the practitioner through the illusions of the night. In Kabbalistic teachings, angels of sleep are said to shield the soul during its descent into the unconscious. Even modern near-death experiencers speak of guides, luminous beings that appear beside them the moment they leave the body. These are not fantasies. They are archetypes. They are memory. And many who've trained in dream work, astral projection, and lucid dreaming report the same thing. The moment you begin to cross into other realms, something meets you there. Sometimes it's felt, sometimes it's seen, sometimes it's just known. They don't speak in words. They don't impose. They simply stand at the edge of the unseen and hold space. They're not here to control your journey. They're here to keep the thread intact, to ensure you don't go too far, to help you return when the body begins to call you back. And on the nights when you've wandered farther than you meant to, on the nights when the energy felt too intense, when you woke up with your heart racing and a dream still burning in your skin, you've probably felt them. Not pulling you, not scolding you, just surrounding you, like arms made of light, gathering you back into the body. Some call them guardians, some call them guides. Some say they're fragments of your own higher self. Whatever the name, they are real. And if you've ever felt that quiet sense of safety, that sacred stillness just before waking, when the air feels charged but peaceful, you've already met them. They didn't ask you to believe. They only needed you to remember, because you were never traveling alone, not in this world, and not in the ones beyond it. Have you ever stepped into a place for the first time and felt like you were returning? The streets are unfamiliar, the architecture foreign, the language unknown, and yet you know it, you feel it. You walk through a town you've never visited, and your body tenses like it's been here before. The air carries a memory, a scent, a vibration. You don't remember the name, but your soul remembers the feeling. It's not nostalgia, it's not coincidence, it's a sign, because sometimes the soul revisits places from past incarnations, and sometimes it returns from travels in realms that exist outside of time, parallel realities, dreamscapes, astral cities. These places may not exist on a map, but they exist in you, and when the veil thins, you feel them. You walk through ruins in another country and get chills, not from the cold, but from the echo. You see a building in a dream, and then find yourself standing in front of it months later in waking life. You move through a new space, like you already know where everything is, where the light hits, where the hidden door waits, where the voices used to gather. That's not random, that's resonance. In Hinduism and Buddhism, this is recognized as samskaras, imprints of memory from past lives. In esoteric teachings, it's dimensional bleed-through, when the soul's experience in other timelines begins to surface into this one. Even children sometimes speak of these places, little ones who've never traveled, describing landscapes with detail, talking about buildings that no longer exist or haven't existed in centuries. These are not stories. These are remembrances. The soul has traveled too far to forget everything. Some memories slip through, not in language, but in recognition. And if you felt it, that eerie, aching familiarity with a place you've never been, don't ignore it. That is not your imagination. That is your soul, pressing its face against the glass, saying, "We've been here before." And maybe it was a past life. Maybe it was a parallel one. Or maybe you went there last night, in your dreams, in your astral travels, in the silence between breaths. The mind doesn't always remember where the body has not walked, but the soul does. The soul always remembers. So if you've ever stood in a place and felt time ripple, felt your skin buzz, felt your heart whisper, "This is sacred," then you already know. Some journeys never truly end. They wait for you, in the curves of the earth, in the echo of stone, in the stillness of recognition. And when you're ready, they show you the way back. You wake up, and something's off. You can't explain it. There's a heaviness in your chest, or a softness, or a strange quiet ache that follows you from room to room. It's not tied to anything that happened yesterday, not a memory, not a conversation, not a worry. It's something else, something that traveled with you through the night. This is emotional residue, the echo of where you've just been, who you've just encountered, what you just felt. In a realm your conscious mind cannot name, but your energy field still carries. We've been taught to dismiss this, to shake it off, to distract ourselves, to get back to normal. But the soul doesn't care about normal. The soul feels everything. And sometimes what it feels doesn't belong to this world. Maybe you were with someone, a soul from another lifetime, a version of you from a parallel path, a guide, a child, a stranger, whose presence lit something inside you or stirred something you haven't healed yet. You wake up changed, not because of a dream, but because of a contact, energetic contact. The great traditions knew this. The Sufis called it hal, a spiritual state left behind after union with the divine. Mystical Christianity spoke of spiritual fragrance, the lingering vibration after angelic visitation. Indigenous shamans described it as soul scent, the trace of a journey too sacred for words. You felt this. You just didn't know how to name it. You've had mornings where you couldn't stop crying, but had no reason why. Days when everything felt raw, even though nothing had happened yet. Moments when you felt watched or blessed or cracked wide open by something invisible. That's not mood, that's memory, a sacred kind of memory that bypasses logic and lives directly in the body, because emotion is energy, and energy is the language of the soul. When you travel at night, you don't always bring back visions or words. Sometimes you bring back feeling, a sadness that isn't yours, a love so deep it makes your throat tighten, a longing you can't place. This is your proof that something happened while the world was still, that your consciousness reached somewhere it couldn't touch by day, that you brushed against truth or memory or presence, and the body, the instrument of this life, remembers. So the next time you feel it, don't push it away. Sit with it, breathe into it, ask your soul, where did we go last night, and what are you still holding? Because the residue you carry is not a burden. It's a sign. Something sacred came close, and part of it came back with you. There are moments in sleep that feel like crossing a threshold. You're drifting peacefully, and suddenly you're falling. The sensation takes over everything. Your stomach drops, your body jerks, and you wake up with your heart racing. Other times, you feel yourself rising, lifting, floating just above your bed, as if something soft and silent is pulling you upward, gently but undeniably. And then there are the nights when you can't move at all. Your eyes are open, or maybe not, but your body is frozen. You try to speak, nothing. Try to move, nothing. And yet, you are aware. These are not glitches. These are not accidents. These are thresholds. You are waking up, mid-exit, or mid-return. Because the soul doesn't always slip quietly in and out. Sometimes you catch it in the middle of its journey. Astral projection teachings speak of this, the moment when the etheric body begins to separate from the physical form, the energetic shift that triggers the vibrational state, buzzing, floating, paralysis. In theosophical texts, these experiences are considered signs that your subtle body is becoming conscious as it prepares to travel. And in indigenous traditions, these sensations are often honored as part of soul walking, where the consciousness expands beyond the skin and learns to navigate the realms of spirit. Even modern science, in its cautious language, acknowledges sleep paralysis as a liminal state, a biological contradiction. The body is asleep, but the mind is awake. But maybe that contradiction is the point, because in that split second, between paralysis and presence, between floating and falling, between stillness and terror, something ancient is happening. You are remembering what it feels like to be not just a body, but a traveler. When you feel yourself floating, you are not hallucinating. You are lifting. When you feel yourself falling, you are not malfunctioning. You are re-entering when you can't move, but your awareness is glowing. You're not stuck. You're suspended between dimensions, between states, between the forgetting and the remembering. And yes, it can feel terrifying because the mind was never taught how to hold this. But the soul has done this 1,000 times. So the next time it happens, instead of fighting it, breathe, surrender, let go of the fear and feel into the miracle. You are witnessing yourself in motion. The bridge between the worlds is not metaphor. It is you, and you're crossing it every single night. You open your eyes, and it's there. A sentence, a vision, a truth you didn't have yesterday, but somehow, now you do. It didn't come from a conversation. It didn't come from a book. It came from somewhere else, somewhere you just were. This is a download, a soul imprint, a message received not through logic, but through resonance. And it often happens in that fragile space between sleep and waking, when your body is still slow, but your spirit is still glowing. Many people report this. The moment they wake, they suddenly know what to do. A problem they couldn't solve, solved. A feeling they couldn't explain, understood. An idea they'd been chasing, now fully formed. It doesn't matter what you believe. These moments happen. To mystics and scientists, creatives and skeptics alike. Because the source isn't intellectual. It's energetic. And it usually comes after a night of deep movement. You were somewhere. You learned something. And though you may not recall the journey, the lesson came with you. It can arrive as a phrase, a voice, a symbol, or just a sudden knowing that bypasses words entirely. Ancient traditions call this gnosis. Knowledge that arises from direct experience and not study. In Hinduism, it's Shruti Dash. Truths that are heard by the soul, in states beyond ordinary consciousness. And in the mystery schools, this was the heart of dream work. To wake with wisdom and live it, because that's the point. These downloads are not just gifts. They're assignments, they're maps, guidance, sacred instructions meant to be acted on, not just admired. Maybe you received one recently, woke with clarity about a relationship, or a sudden urge to create something, or a deep knowing that it's time to change. Not because of fear, but because something within you has already shifted. That's not random. That's the afterglow of spiritual contact. That's your higher self, or a guide, or a version of you beyond time, handing you a key, and what you do with it is up to you. Because these moments are fragile. They fade quickly if we don't honor them. That's why so many ancient teachings included practices like dream journals, morning silence, or breath work upon waking. Not to remember the entire journey, but to hold the spark it left behind. So if you wake with an idea, a feeling, a phrase pulsing in your chest, stop. Don't move too fast. Write it down. Breathe it in. Honor the download, because what you call a sudden thought might just be a message your soul has been waiting lifetimes to deliver. And in that moment, you're not just waking up, you're arriving with something sacred in your hands. You wake suddenly, but something is still with you. A voice, half-spoken, still echoing in your mind. A presence just behind you, like someone was there a second ago, but now the room is still. Sometimes it's a word, sometimes a feeling, sometimes a scene you weren't fully part of, but that somehow knew you. It fades fast, quicker than a dream, too quick for logic to catch, but it was there, and you felt it. This is not imagination. It's the residue of contact, a final echo from where your soul just returned. Because not all parts of the journey stay in the dream. Some follow you home. In ancient traditions, these moments were sacred. The Egyptians taught that messages from the Duat, the hidden realm, often came in whispers at the threshold of waking. In shamanic cultures, these are the visitations, spirits, guides, ancestors, touching the edge of consciousness, just long enough to leave a mark. And in modern reports of near-death and out-of-body experiences, many describe a moment just before waking, when a being speaks, when a presence lingers, when they are told something they carry back into life. You don't need to remember the whole dream. Sometimes all you receive is a fragment, but that fragment is enough to stir your heart, enough to feel like something was left unsaid, or everything was said in a single glance. These voices don't always speak in language. Sometimes they arrive as intuition, sometimes as vibration, sometimes as a single name, a name that makes your skin prickle, but you don't know why. That's not noise. That's a thread, something you were connected to. On the other side, you may have been in a teaching space. You may have met someone from another life. You may have crossed into a place of decision, a soul choice, a karmic agreement, a turning point your waking self hasn't fully realized yet. And what you bring back is the echo, the final ripple before the door closes. Most people miss it. They turn on their phone, they check the time, and the voice dissolves like mist. But you're learning to listen, to pause in those first few seconds, and let the soul speak. Because the moment between sleep and wake is not empty, it's a doorway. And sometimes, something steps through with you, not to haunt, but to guide, not to confuse, but to confirm that you were there, that something happened, that someone saw you, and maybe even spoke your name before you opened your eyes. Some dreams don't fade, they return, night after night, year after year, not always the same, but familiar, like chapters from a book you never meant to keep reading. Maybe it's a staircase you always find yourself walking down, or a city that feels like home, though you've never seen it. Maybe it's a person. Their face keeps changing, but the energy is the same, and every time you meet them, you wake up changed. This isn't coincidence. This is curriculum. Because some dreams are not dreams. They are training, or remembering, or both. The mystics of every ancient path knew this. The Tibetan Buddhists trained to become lucid in their sleep, using dreams to dissolve fear, practice compassion, and prepare for death. In Sufi and Hermetic traditions, the dream world was called the inner temple, a sacred classroom of the soul, where hidden teachings were revealed through symbols and encounters. In Jungian psychology, recurring dreams are the psyche's attempt to integrate truth the waking mind isn't yet ready to hold. But your soul is always ready. That's why it brings you back, again and again. Each time the lesson deepens, the imagery sharpens, the emotion intensifies, and one day you realize this isn't just sleep, this is a journey. Because the more you evolve, the more the dream changes. It tests you, it shows you more. Sometimes you overcome something in the dream and never face it in waking life again. Other times you fail, you run, you avoid. But even that is sacred. Even that is teaching. Because the soul doesn't judge, it reveals, and the classroom is always tailored to you. Have you ever had a dream where you knew you were being watched? Not in fear, but in observation, like something beyond you. was assessing your progress. That's not paranoia. That's guidance. You are being shown what you're ready to integrate. You are being taught in symbols, because the soul speaks in imagery, and sometimes you are remembering something you already learned in another life, another world, another time. These are soul imprints, replaying until you choose to awaken within them. And when you do, when you stop reacting and start asking questions in the dream, when you listen, when you write it down in the morning, everything changes. You're not just dreaming, you're remembering, you're being refined, you're being prepared. Because some dreams aren't random, they are initiations. And if you've had one that keeps coming back, don't run from it. You're not being haunted, you're being invited. You are more than skin and breath. You've always known that, even if you couldn't explain it. There's something inside you that doesn't decay, something that remembers what your name forgets, something that drifts far when the body lies still and still finds its way home. That something is your energy body. Every tradition has spoken of it. The Hindus call it the pranamaya kosha, the body of life force. The Chinese call it qi, flowing through meridians that link flesh to spirit. In Kabbalah, it's nefesh, the animating breath that bridges the physical and the divine. And in the space between these layers, between body and soul, exists the tether, the silver cord. It's not metaphor, it's not mythology, it's the thread of light that holds your spirit in place while you travel, a shimmering connection between the body resting in bed and the part of you flying through dimensions most people pretend don't exist. Ecclesiastes 12:6, ancient Hebrew scripture, speaks of the silver cord being loosed at death, and thousands of near-death experiences describe it the same way, an elastic, luminous link that keeps them attached to life until it's time to let go. You don't have to die to feel it. You just have to notice what happens when your consciousness begins to shift. The vibrations, the sound, the subtle pulling, the weightless lift, and the invisible thread that always knows how to bring you back. It's your safety line, your permission slip, your sacred anchor in the sea of the unseen. Because when you sleep, you don't just shut down, you open. Your energy body becomes active, it expands, it explores, and the silver cord ensures you don't drift too far until the day it breaks, which is not now. So if you've ever felt the sensation of lifting out of your body, but being held back, pull gently towards your chest. That's it. That's your cord. And that moment is the beginning of a journey your soul has taken 1,000 times before. You don't need to see it, to believe in it. You only need to remember how many times you've woken up with a full body jolt, heart pounding, breath caught like you were dropped back into your skin from somewhere else. You were. And the only reason you could return is because the bridge was still intact. So don't take that thread for granted. It is your lifeline between worlds, your cosmic signature, and your invitation to explore the mystery without ever truly leaving yourself behind. You wake up and it's dark. Not morning, not time. Just a soft stirring, somewhere deep in your chest, like something nudged you from the inside. It doesn't feel like insomnia. It feels sacred, like you were meant to wake up. And maybe you were, before electricity, before industrial time, before artificial light turned night into day. Humans didn't sleep in one long block. They slept in two. Biphasic sleep, one sleep before midnight, a sacred pause in the middle of the night, and a second sleep until dawn. And in that gap, that quiet middle space, something holy happened. It was the time for prayer, for dream work, for listening. Monks rose to chant. Mystics journaled their visions. Midwives meditated. Farmers stared into the fire and spoke to their ancestors, because that gap was a portal, a soft opening between the conscious and the unconscious, between the self and the soul. You felt it, that middle of the night clarity, the stillness, the messages, the sensation that something is just within reach if you stay quiet enough to hear it. Modern science has begun to remember what the ancients never forgot, that this in-between state is rich with theta brainwaves, the frequency of lucid dreaming, deep intuition, and creative insight. You are half asleep but not gone. You are not quite awake but not lost. You are open. And when you learn to stay present in that space, instead of forcing yourself back to sleep or grabbing your phone, you begin to notice what's been waiting for you there. A dream that lingers, a phrase that repeats, a sensation that something just happened, but you caught it on the edge. This is when your consciousness is most available for travel. It's easier to separate from the body because your awareness is already loose. It's easier to remember because your mind hasn't locked back into the day. You are still fluid, still listening. And this is where the ancients practiced conscious sleep. Not sleeping in fear, not sleeping in distraction, but sleeping as a doorway to higher realities. This is why your soul wakes you at 3 a.m. Not to torture you, to invite you, to remind you that this hour was never meant for scrolling. It was meant for remembering. So the next time you wake in that strange silence, don't rush back into unconsciousness. Sit up, breathe, listen. Because that pause between sleeps may be the only time your soul can whisper clearly, without the noise of the day drowning it out. It's not a disturbance, it's a summons, and it's been calling you for lifetimes. You've had the dream. Maybe it was a staircase that led nowhere, a locked door in a room that didn't exist, an animal watching you from the shadows, a storm, a mirror, a sudden fall. You wake up trying to understand, but it doesn't make sense. That's because it wasn't meant to, not to the mind at least, because dream symbols are not language. They're not logic, they're vibration. Your soul doesn't speak in words, it speaks in codes. And symbols are how the soul gets past the filters. They bypass the intellect. They slip through the cracks in your conditioning and land in your heart like a whisper you don't yet understand. But you feel it. You always feel it. That's why a dream can haunt you for days. Not because of what it showed, but because of what it stirred. Symbols are soul activated. They carry frequencies. You don't dream of a key. Because your brain is constructing riddles, you dream of a key. Because something inside you is ready to unlock. You dream of water. Because an emotion has begun to move. You dream of an open door. Because your soul is preparing for passage. It's not metaphor. It's memory speaking in color. And if you try to analyze it too quickly, you miss it. Dream work isn't about decoding. It's about listening, feeling the resonance, noticing the way your body reacts when you remember, the way your breath catches. When the image returns in your mind, your energy remembers, before your words do. That's why some symbols show up again and again, because you didn't receive the transmission the first time. Or maybe you weren't ready to. Carl Jung knew this. He called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. But even he understood that symbols don't always point outward. They point inward, to archetypes, to unresolved wounds, to sacred truths buried beneath the noise of waking life. Indigenous traditions often treat dreams as messages from ancestors, spirits, or the higher self. But they don't dissect them, they honor them. They carry them like sacred letters, written in smoke and shadow. And that's what your soul wants you to do. Not pick the dream apart, but sit with it, breathe into it. Ask, not what does this mean, but what does this feel like? What does the symbol awaken in you? That's where the answer lives. Not in your mind, but in your field, in your chest, in the way your energy shifts when you allow the message to land. So the next time a dream symbol follows you into the day, don't rush to interpret it. Let it speak in silence, because some messages are only heard by the parts of you that already remember. There's a place you pass through every night. You slip into it slowly without even realizing. The body relaxes, the mind unhooks, and then something strange begins. Images appear from nowhere. Faces, symbols, colors, scenes. You're not asleep, but you're not fully here either. This is the hypnagogic state, and it's not a glitch, it's a gateway. The ancients knew this. They didn't fall asleep like we do, distracted, exhausted, unconscious. They watched for this threshold. They honored it, because it's in this state, not fully awake, not yet asleep, that realities blur. The Greeks built temples for it, sleep temples, where seekers would enter trance and receive healing visions in the hypnagogic current. Mystics across traditions used it to channel, to contact the divine, to hear what the waking world kept too loud to notice. And modern neuroscience, it confirms what the ancients always knew. During this liminal state, your brain shifts into theta waves, deeply intuitive, emotionally charged, and receptive. This is the same brainwave state found in deep meditation, in shamanic journeying, in psychedelic insight, except it happens naturally, every single night, and most of us miss it. We fall asleep too fast, or fight to stay awake, or scroll past the signs. But if you learn to slow down, to feel this moment, you'll notice what lives inside it. The buzzing in your ears, the sensation of floating, the images that flash in and out like messages, the feeling that something is near, watching, waiting. You're not imagining it, you're arriving. In the gateway, it's here that your soul begins to separate, not violently, not forcefully, but like mist lifting from water. The hypnagogic state is your departure lounge between dimensions, and if you can stay conscious inside it, you can begin to travel with intention. You can start to choose where you go, what you remember, what you receive. This is where lucid dreams begin. This is where astral projection begins. This is where contact is made, but only if you stay still, only if you listen. Because the moment you flinch, the moment fear kicks in, the door begins to close. So next time you feel yourself drifting and you start to see flashes behind your eyes, don't turn away. Breathe, stay soft, stay curious. Let the veil thin. You are not falling asleep, you are entering. And in this space, you don't need a map. Your soul knows the way. They told you dreams were just static, that sleep was just a shutdown, that nothing happening behind your eyelids could possibly matter. But that was never true, because while your body rests, your soul moves, and where it goes has been written about for thousands of years, just not in the books they left on the shelves. The so-called forbidden texts, burned, buried, or kept behind locked doors, described it in chilling, beautiful detail. The soul doesn't wander aimlessly in the night. It journeys through astral planes, layers of existence stacked beyond physical perception. Not above us, not below, but around, everywhere, invisible fields of light and density, each one vibrating at a different frequency. Some are soft, healing, wrapped in gold and violet and soundless music. These are the temples of learning, the sacred halls of wisdom, where souls receive instructions, recall forgotten truths, or prepare for what's next. You may have been there and called it a dream, a vast library with no books, but every answer you've ever searched for. A school where no one speaks, but everything is understood. Or a glowing place that felt like home without needing a name. But not every plane is peaceful. Some are dense, shadowed, filled with echoes of pain, thoughts that haven't yet dissolved, and energies clinging to what they've lost. These are lower astral fields. They exist because thought is energy, and energy doesn't vanish. It gathers. That's why some nights feel heavy. Why you wake up drained. Because your soul was navigating through residue, helping, witnessing, learning how to hold your light in places that have forgotten theirs. And then there are the mirror fields, realities that look like this world, but aren't. You might walk down a familiar street, but something's off. The colors are too bright, the silence too loud. The clock has no numbers. Time bends. These are parallel planes, the dream versions of decisions you never made. Alternate timelines, reflections of other yous, living other lives. And when you visit them, it's not fiction. It's you, witnessing the multiverse, through the lens of sleep. The forbidden texts, like the Hermetic fragments, the Egyptian Book of the Night, and certain Gnostic codices mapped these layers. They described initiations, guardians at the gates, sacred symbols used as keys to travel consciously between realms. They were hidden because they threatened control, because a soul that remembers its freedom is dangerous. And your dreams, they've been trying to remind you, you've been there, to the temples, to the shadowed fields, to the halls of memory, where you met the ones who've been guiding you all along. You don't need proof, you only need to feel what wakes up in you when you hear this, because your soul already knows where it goes. And now, you remember. Some nights you don't dream, you meet. A figure steps forward. A voice calls your name, one you haven't heard in lifetimes. You wake with tears on your face and a feeling in your chest that someone was just with you. You can't explain it, but you know it wasn't you alone in that space. Because not everything you meet in the night is a product of memory. Some are beings, some are guides, some are lost souls, looking for a light they recognize in you. And some watch, not with malice, not always with warmth, but with a presence that reminds you you are not the only traveler in these realms. Mystics across traditions have spoken of this. Tibetan monks describe deities and wrathful protectors who appear in the bardo not as literal monsters, but as reflections of our own inner terrain. Sufi mystics encountered beings of light, who taught them through silence, who gave them visions they carried back into waking life. As scripture, even in modern near-death and astral projection accounts, people describe presences, some radiant, some shadowed, some entirely unnameable. You may have felt it too, in a dream that felt too alive, in a whisper that woke you up, in a shape at the edge of your bed, that dissolved when you opened your eyes, but left the air humming behind. Not all of these beings are human. Some have never been. Some are teachers. They don't speak, but their presence teaches. They hold out a book. They show you a mirror. They give you a choice. Others are fragments of old souls, the ones still wandering, the ones who didn't finish what they came to do. You might wake feeling overwhelmed because something tried to pass through you, tried to speak through you, tried to find resolution in your light. And then there are the watchers. They don't intervene. They don't explain. They observe. Some call them guardians. Some say they're sentinels of the veil. Others believe they're echoes from beyond time. Beings who study the soul's evolution. Across dimensions, you might feel them most when you're between waking and sleep, when your consciousness is cracked open and the room feels too still, when the silence has depth, when the hairs on your skin rise for no reason. It's not fear, it's recognition. You've been seen, and while not every presence is meant to be trusted, not everyone is a threat. The key is vibration. What you meet in the night mirrors what you carry into it. So enter with clarity, with love, with boundaries, and know that if something comes close, it's because it sensed something ancient in you too. You're not just walking through the unseen, you're being witnessed by the very things that remember where you come from. There are dreams that don't feel like dreams. They don't drift. They don't melt into symbols. They move with purpose. You're doing something, helping someone, searching, carrying out an action with clarity you didn't even know you had. And when you wake up, you feel it in your bones, like you were just working. But not a job you know, not a task from this life, a mission. And maybe that's exactly what it was, because the soul doesn't clock out when the body sleeps. In many ancient traditions, it's believed that sleep isn't just restoration, it's activation. It's when the soul leaves the limited field of the waking world and steps into higher service, helping others cross through trauma, sending energy to those in grief, guiding the lost toward light, meeting someone on the edge of a decision, and helping them choose love instead of fear. These aren't stories. They're the whispers you carry. When you wake up crying and don't know why. When you feel proud but can't explain what you did. When you wake up exhausted but strangely fulfilled. This is the soul in motion. The Bhagavad Gita speaks of the one who acts without attachment, who fulfills their dharma with no need for recognition. That's what the soul does while you sleep. It serves. It remembers the oaths you made long before this life, the vows, the callings that haven't faded with time. And every night, you return to them, sometimes consciously, sometimes not. But the imprint is always there. Mystics have described these as nocturnal assignments, tasks the soul agrees to between incarnations, not for glory, not for points, but because service is remembrance, and every act of service is a step back toward who you truly are. You might help a soul stuck in a loop. You might anchor light in a place that's been dark for centuries. You might just sit with someone, silent and loving, because their own guides can't reach them. And when you wake, you won't always remember the scene, but you'll feel the afterglow, or the weight, or both, that dream you keep having, where you're saving someone, where you're calming chaos, where you're standing between two worlds. It's not fiction, it's soul memory. And your exhaustion isn't failure, it's proof. You went far, you gave deeply, and now you've returned to live another day in the waking world, carrying a little more light than you had yesterday. So next time you feel like you are doing something important in your sleep, you're not just a dreamer. You're a servant of something greater. And the night is your sanctuary to fulfill what this world hasn't yet remembered it needs. Every night, something in you slips free. Not your body, not your thoughts, Your consciousness, it drifts through space, through memory, through dimensions without names. But what's often missed is that it doesn't drift alone, because your soul leads the way. You are not your mind, not your thoughts, not your personality, not even your identity. All of those things belong to the ego self, the version of you built to navigate the physical world. And it's beautiful, it's necessary, but it's not in charge once you fall asleep. When the body rests, when the mind softens, when the thoughts begin to fade, what rises is the eternal self, the part of you that was never born and cannot die. That self knows the way home, and it's that self that carries your consciousness into the places your waking mind can't follow. The difference matters because the ego mind is curious. It wants control. It asks questions like, where are we going? Is this safe? What's the meaning of this symbol? But the soul doesn't ask. The soul already knows. It doesn't need to analyze. It simply remembers. That's why the most powerful dream journeys don't make sense to your thinking mind, because they weren't made for it. They were orchestrated by something deeper, older, wiser, your soul. You might leave your body and float above it. You might pass through a doorway in a dream. You might arrive in a place you've never seen, but feel instantly at peace. Your ego didn't plan that. Your soul did. And the consciousness you carry, it's like a candle in the hand of the one who knows the path. You're not guiding the journey. You're being carried. And that's why sometimes you return with truths you don't know how to speak, with clarity you didn't search for, with healing you didn't understand you needed, because the soul already knew. All you did was follow. And if you ever wake up with a feeling that something sacred just happened, but you can't explain it, that's the echo of a journey led by the part of you. That never gets lost. The next time you feel yourself slipping into sleep, don't try to hold on. Let go. Let the mind release its grip. Let the questions fall away, and trust that the one who's taking you knows the way back. Because consciousness is a traveler, but the soul is the compass. You were taught to believe that you are a body that occasionally dreams, that your sleep is passive, that your mind shuts down, that what happens at night is meaningless static fired from a resting brain. But that was never true, because you are not a body that dreams. You are a soul that travels. The body is your vessel, a sacred one, yes, but still a container. It sleeps, it restores, it breathes, it ages. But your soul moves. It slips into dimensions the body cannot enter. It receives teachings the ego cannot decode. It weaves through memory, myth, and mission, not randomly, but with purpose. And every night, it leaves, quietly, faithfully, not because you're broken, but because you're boundless. You may not remember where you go, but your energy does. You carry traces, frequencies, soft imprints of places that felt more real than the ground beneath your feet. This isn't poetry. This is physics of the subtle kind. The Upanishads say the soul is like a swan, dwelling in the body by day, but returning to its home in the invisible. As the sun sets, esoteric Christianity speaks of the night as the time when the soul returns to the Father's house. And mystics across every lineage have always whispered this one thing: you are more than you appear, more than skin, more than name, more than even thought. You are the traveler, the witness, the one who watches the dream from behind the veil. You are the reason the dream exists at all. That's why some dreams feel like prophecies, That's why some leave you aching for a place you've never seen, because your soul doesn't sleep. It journeys. And if you've ever felt the pull to go deeper, to understand why you wake with tears, why a scent in a dream makes you break open, why your bones ache for something you've never touched, it's because you were there, not your mind, you. So what do you do with this truth? You stop shrinking. You stop dismissing what your spirit is trying to show you, and you start listening, not just with the ears, but with the space behind them, with the center of the chest, with the breath that deepens every time you remember that you're not just dreaming at night, you're being summoned, because this world isn't the only one you live in, and the part of you that knows that isn't new, it's eternal, it's the soul, and it's been traveling far longer than the body ever knew. You've been there, not once, not twice, but hundreds of times, across lifetimes, across realms, but you don't remember, not because it didn't happen, but because you were never taught how to carry the sacred back across the veil. You were taught to dismiss it, to wake up and move on, to treat dreams like noise, sleep like silence, but your soul has been screaming in symbols, whispering in images, leaving you breadcrumbs in the morning. And now you're ready to remember, not like remembering a fact, but like remembering a melody, a feeling, a presence that returns when you let the stillness come. So how do you begin? Start with intention. The soul responds to clarity. Before you sleep, speak to it. Say, "Tonight, I choose to remember." Say, "Show me what I need to receive." Say it not as a command, but as a reunion, an invitation to meet what already knows your name. Then, breathe. Deep, slow, sacred breath, the kind that draws you out of the surface and into the space behind the eyes. Let your nervous system soften. Let the body know it's safe to release. The more relaxed the body, the more fluid the exit. And when the doorway opens, you'll be ready. Next, create ritual. It doesn't have to be complex, just consistent. Light a candle. Burn a little sage or cedar. Touch your heart. Give the night your attention, like you would a sacred guest. Because when you treat sleep like ceremony, the soul responds in kind. And when you wake, write. Keep a journal near your bed, not for analysis, for capture. Before you even move, before the dream dissolves, write down anything. A color, a phrase, a face, a feeling. Even if it makes no sense, especially if it makes no sense, because those fragments are echoes, and the more you honor them, the louder they'll become. Over time, patterns emerge, places repeat, symbols clarify, voices return, and slowly, what was hidden starts to speak. Some also find resonance in placing a crystal by the bed, like amethyst or labradorite, or sleeping with a question under their pillow. These are not tricks, they are anchors. They tell the unseen, "I'm listening." And that's all it ever wanted. So if you've ever said, "I wish I could remember," the truth is, you can. You were never meant to forget. You were just never shown how to hold the flame once you returned. But now the match is in your hands, and the next dream you carry might be the one you finally recognize as real, because it is, and so are you. Not all dreams are the same. Some are just the mind, sorting, releasing, recycling. The residue of a stressful day, the flicker of movies, memories, and thoughts you forgot you had. But others, they linger. They arrive with weight, with stillness, with that unmistakable silence that says you were somewhere else, So how do you tell the difference? How do you know when it was just the mind wandering and when it was your soul returning? It starts with frequency. A real soul journey doesn't feel like noise. It feels like presence. There's a clarity to it, even if you don't remember the details. You wake up and the room feels different. You feel different. There's often a buzzing in your chest, or a softness behind your eyes, or a stillness so deep you forget to speak. That's not mental, that's energetic. Because when you truly travel, when your consciousness leaves and your soul leads, you bring something back, a new frequency, a higher vibration, a different kind of silence. And that silence speaks volumes. Then there's depth. Normal dreams feel sketched, flat, foggy around the edges. But soul journeys, they feel layered, symbolic, alive. You don't just watch them, you're in them. You feel, you act, you choose. They carry emotion you didn't expect. Grief that doesn't belong to you. Love so big you wake up crying. And that's the clue. Emotion is the fingerprint of soul travel. Because the soul doesn't visit places. It reconnects with truths. And the last sign is the memory signature. With normal dreams, they fade quickly, dissolving like fog at sunrise. But soul journeys, you remember them for years, not always in detail, but in imprint. A face that visits you again and again, a temple you draw without knowing why, a phrase that repeats in your mind for weeks. You don't know where it came from, but it came from somewhere. And that resonance, that deep knowing, that's the soul's language. It doesn't speak in logic, it speaks in memory. Not the kind stored in the brain, but the kind etched in your field, in your very being. So next time you wake up and wonder, was that real? Don't ask if it happened in the physical. Ask what changed inside you, because soul journeys don't beg to be proven. They ask to be lived, to be integrated, to be honored. And the more you listen, the clearer the line becomes. Between dream and destination, you're not just a sleeper, you're a traveler. And some nights, you go so far that the body doesn't catch up for days. Every night a door opens, sometimes gently, sometimes all at once. And as your body releases, your energy expands. You become softer, more porous, more sensitive. And that's beautiful, but also vulnerable. Because just as there are temples of light, in the unseen realms, there are also echoes, fragments, and energies not meant for you. Not everything in the astral world is wise. Not everything is whole. Not everything is friendly. And just as you wouldn't leave your front door wide open in the middle of the night, you shouldn't leave your soul unguarded either. This isn't about fear. It's about frequency, spiritual hygiene, energetic sovereignty, the quiet rituals that create protection without paranoia. So how do you begin? Start by becoming aware of how you enter sleep. What is the last thing you see? What is the last thought you think? What frequency are you breathing into the dark? Because your emotional state is a signal. Fear invites density. Clutter invites confusion. But love invites clarity. And presence invites guidance. So begin with the energy of your room. Tidy your space. Light a candle. Open a window, even just for a moment. Let the room feel like sanctuary, not storage. Then choose your anchors. These can be subtle. A piece of amethyst or black tourmaline near the bed. A drop of lavender on the pillow. A sacred object on your nightstand. Anything that says, This is my space. This is sacred ground. Then cleanse your field. One of the simplest ways? Your breath. Breathe in deeply through your nose. Exhale through your mouth, as if blowing away the static of the day. Do this slowly, 3 times. Let it be intentional. And then, set your protection. You don't need a complex spell. You just need presence. Say something out loud, or whisper it in your heart. Let it sound like, I surround myself with light. I travel only where love allows. I welcome guidance. I reject confusion. I remember who I am, even in the dark. This is your spiritual perimeter, and it matters, because intention is the architecture of the astral. It shapes where you go, what you meet, and how you return. Some also visualize a field of golden light around them, a cocoon, a shield, a soft flame that stays lit even as they sleep. You can do this too, not from fear, but from reverence, because your soul is precious, your energy is sacred, and the night is vast. So before you close your eyes, remember, you are not shutting down. You are opening up. Protect the opening, honor the path, and let your sleep become ceremony. There was a book. You've never held it, but it's held you. In whispers, in symbols, in that strange knowing that your sleep has never been empty. It wasn't written in ink. It was carved in memory, etched in the spaces between dimensions, and protected so fiercely that entire empires rose and fell. Trying to erase it, the ancient ones called it many names. The map of return, the mirror of sleep, the book of the breathless hours. It described in detail what happens after the body closes its eyes. Not just where you go, but why you go, and what waits for you if you ever learn to cross the veil without forgetting. It warned that the veil between worlds was never meant to be completely removed, only thinned, glimpsed, touched softly like fire through silk, because to see too much too soon can burn the very structure your mind depends on to stay sane. And yet, to forget completely is worse. To live your whole life believing you are just this body, just this job, just these memories. That is the deeper death. So the book was hidden, not out of malice, but mercy, because memory is a blade. In the wrong hands it severs, in the right ones it heals. And only those who had walked enough lifetimes were allowed to hold it again. But fragments survived. In the tombs of Egypt, where the Book of Night painted stars across the inner walls. In the scrolls of the Essenes, where sleep was spoken of as sacred passage. In the Tibetan Bardo Thodol, which warned if you don't learn to die consciously, you'll keep forgetting who you are. And now, here you are, feeling pieces return, not through history books, but through your own breath, your own nights, your own undeniable sense that something has always been happening, while the world told you it wasn't. Maybe that's why you're here, because your soul found the door again, and now it's knocking. The ancient book warned of this too, that a time would come when remembrance would rise again, not from scholars, but from dreamers, from travelers like you, who wake up in the morning with nothing to prove, but everything to feel. So if you've begun to see sleep differently, if your dreams feel heavier, truer, more alive, it's because something inside you has remembered the pages no one could ever burn. And the book, it was never truly buried. It was waiting inside you all along. You were taught to shut down, close your eyes, turn off the lights, disappear for 8 hours, and hope to wake up refreshed. But the night was never meant to be a pause. it was always a portal. The elders knew this. The mystics knew this. Even your soul has always known that the dark isn't just the absence of light. It's the invitation to leave the noise, to loosen the grip, to cross back through the veil and return to the parts of yourself you can't access during the day, because here, in the sacred dark, you are not your obligations, not your name, not your to-do list. You are essence, you are spirit, you are the breath that moves without needing proof. And every single night, you step toward that portal, sometimes stumbling, sometimes floating, sometimes being pulled by something that feels like home. And most of the time, you forget because no one told you the truth. That night is not for shutting down. It's for showing up. It's the classroom, the temple, the healing chamber, the mirror. It's where the soul goes to realign, to remember, to receive. But only if you let it. Only if you enter with presence, not exhaustion. With reverence, not escape. Because there's a difference between falling asleep and crossing over. One is survival. The other is sacred technology. You don't need special rituals to remember this. You just need awareness to dim the lights, not as a signal to shut down, but as an offering to lay your body down like you're stepping into the river between worlds, to breathe as if the breath itself were the key to the door, to speak not to the ceiling but to the soul. Take me where I need to go. Let me see what I am ready to remember. Let me return whole. Because the portal is always there. It never closed. It only waits for your attention. And when you give it, you begin to live two lives. The one you walk during the day and the one you fly through at night. And neither one is more real. Both are you. Both are sacred. Both are part of the path you chose long before this body ever opened its eyes. So tonight, when the sky darkens, when the world slows, when the silence begins to hum, don't just go to bed. Enter. Because you were never meant to sleep through the journey. You were meant to awaken inside it. You thought you were awake during the day. You thought the sun meant consciousness, that work meant purpose, that action meant life. But slowly, silently, something else has been calling you. In the dark, in the stillness, in the space where your name doesn't follow you. And now, you know. The real awakening doesn't happen when your alarm goes off. It doesn't begin with a cup of coffee or a calendar full of plans. It begins when the mind finally releases, when the body softens, when the veil thins, and when the part of you that never needed permission begins to move again. While you sleep, your soul travels. While you dream, it remembers. And while your body forgets, your essence begins to see. What if the entire point wasn't to stay awake longer, but to learn how to wake up? Inside the sleep, what if the journey was never linear, but circular, every night returning you to the origin, to the temple, to the breath behind all things? This is the great reversal, that the deeper truth comes in the quietest hours, that the most sacred learning doesn't always happen in books, but in symbols, in encounters, in floating feelings you can't explain, but feel in your bones. You weren't just sleeping, you were training, serving, reuniting with guides, with soul contracts, with alternate versions of yourself, still carrying pieces of your purpose. So if you're waking up different now, with strange clarity, with new emotion, with a pull to live more fully than you did before, it's because the part of you that left during the night brought something back, a message, a mission, a memory, and now it's yours. So protect your nights, honor them, treat them not as breaks from life, but as the spaces where life gets rewoven, because now you know. You're not just a dreamer, you're a traveler, a listener, a soul who crosses between worlds, not to escape, but to remember. So tonight, don't just fall asleep. Enter the portal, set the intention, carry the light, and when you return, leave a trace for someone else to follow. You were taught to shut down, close your eyes, turn off the lights, disappear for 8 hours, and hope to wake up refreshed. But the night was never meant to be a pause. It was always a portal. The elders knew this. The mystics knew this. Even your soul has always known that the dark isn't just the absence of light. It's the invitation to leave the noise, to loosen the grip, to cross back through the veil, and return to the parts of yourself you can't access during the day. Because here, in the sacred dark, you are not your obligations, not your name, not your to-do list. You are essence, you are spirit, you are the breath that moves without needing proof. And every single night, you step toward that portal, sometimes stumbling, sometimes floating, sometimes being pulled by something that feels like home. And most of the time, you forget because no one told you the truth. That night is not for shutting down, it's for showing up. It's the classroom, the temple, the healing chamber, the mirror. It's where the soul goes to realign, to remember, to receive, but only if you let it. Only if you enter with presence, not exhaustion, with reverence, not escape. Because there's a difference between falling asleep and crossing over. One is survival, the other is sacred technology. You don't need special rituals to remember this. You just need awareness to dim the lights, not as a signal to shut down, but as an offering to lay your body down, like you're stepping into the river, between worlds, to breathe, as if the breath itself were the key to the door, to speak, not to the ceiling, but to the soul. Take me where I need to go. Let me see what I am ready to remember. Let me return whole. Because the portal is always there. It never closed. It only waits for your attention. And when you give it, you begin to live two lives. The one you walk during the day, and the one you fly through at night. And neither one is more real. Both are you. Both are sacred. Both are part of the path you chose long before this body ever opened its eyes. So tonight, when the sky darkens, when the world slows, when the silence begins to hum, don't just go to bed. Enter, because you were never meant to sleep through the journey. You were meant to awaken inside it. You thought you were awake during the day. You thought the sun meant consciousness, that work meant purpose, that action meant life. But slowly, silently, something else has been calling you. In the dark, in the stillness, in the space where your name doesn't follow you. And now, you know, the real awakening doesn't happen when your alarm goes off. It doesn't begin with a cup of coffee or a calendar full of plans. It begins when the mind finally releases, when the body softens, when the veil thins, and when the part of you that never needed permission begins to move again. While you sleep, your soul travels. While you dream, it remembers. And while your body forgets, your essence begins to see. What if the entire point wasn't to stay awake longer, but to learn how to wake up inside the sleep? What if the journey was never linear, but circular? Every night returning you to the origin, to the temple, to the breath behind all things. This is the great reversal, that the deeper truth comes in the quietest hours, that the most sacred learning doesn't always happen in books, but in symbols, in encounters, in floating feelings you can't explain, but feel in your bones. You weren't just sleeping, you were training, serving, reuniting, with guides, with soul contracts, with alternate versions of yourself, still carrying pieces of your purpose. So if you're waking up different now, with strange clarity, with new emotion, with a pull to live more fully than you did before, it's because the part of you that left during the night brought something back, a message, a mission, a memory, and now it's yours. So protect your nights, honor them, treat them not as breaks from life, but as the spaces where life gets rewoven. Because now you know. You're not just a dreamer, you're a traveler, a listener, a soul who crosses between worlds, not to escape, but to remember. So tonight, don't just fall asleep, enter the portal, set the intention, carry the light, and when you return, leave a trace for someone else to follow, because someone out there is still believing they're just a body. Your voice might be their mirror. If something in you remembered tonight, leave a comment below. Tell us what sign called to your soul, what message you're carrying back, because your words might be the key someone else has been waiting for. Subscribe if you're ready for more, because this is just the beginning. And we go deep every single week. Share this with the one soul you know is awakening in silence, because maybe this is the message they've been searching lifetimes to hear. And now, one final truth to seal this journey home. You were never asleep. You were only waiting for the part of you that remembers to rise. Welcome back, traveler. Welcome to the hidden voyage. Welcome home, soul whisperer and soul creator. The hidden voyage